Raymond in Columbus, Ohio. You're live with Eric and Jamie. How's it going?
What's up? I'm on Talk to You Then.
Yeah!
Woo! Me too.
What's up? I love what you guys do.
Thank you.
Oh, you.
Aw.
So last week you guys kind of touched on free will a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
Pretty sure Eric said something about how it kind of doesn't matter that we, like, if we have agency or not, we just kind of continue to make choices regardless.
Yeah. You use different words, but I think that's pretty close to what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I think if we get stuck on minutia, I can probably clear that up to the best of my ability.
Okay. Because, like, I think that, the idea of agency at some level, if we're talking about, like, free will in some sense or agency in some sense, it has to come down to, like, some little person in your head is responsible for ultimately flipping the switch on a yes or no decision.
Right, the Jiminy Cricket, like we were talking last week.
Yeah. And so, like, if there's no explanation for you having that little person in your head, if the universe is deterministic, or even if it's not deterministic and it has randomness, it doesn't make sense to talk about agency. Like, in a similar way to, like, I'm sure you guys have heard Tracy Harris on the Atheist Experience.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard of her, yeah.
Yeah, people think that she's my mom.
Yeah. I mean, we can neither confirm nor deny that.
When she talks about nothing, she has a really good way of going about it because, it's like a confusing notion. We've never seen a nothing.
Yeah.
There's never been a nothing to look at. And I feel a similar way about agency. Like, the universe as I know it has always obeyed cause and effect. Yeah. And if our brain is part of the universe, a physical part of the universe, then it too obeys cause and effect. There are governing principles for everything that we do.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that and we only have... Well, what I would say to that is we only have one universe, and here we go. At the quantum level, brace yourselves, I use the word quantum. At the quantum level, evidently there are things that happen that, as far as we can observe, don't have a
governing
causal,
principle.
a governing principle or a causal part of them. And so it's easy to say, we'll probably find it, but it's also possible that we won't. But
what would that even feel like is my point. Like, what would that even be? It's like we're trapped up in the belief that we have agency without ever breaking it down enough to know that it just doesn't map with any conceptualization of reality. Even if things at a quantum level are fundamentally random, that doesn't give you choice. It just gives you randomness. A dice roll doesn't give you any more power of agency more than the determinism of the universe.
So the thing that would change would be whether or not we live in a deterministic universe.
Yeah, I was actually going to...
Yeah, if we live in a deterministic universe, then what you're saying is right on. But if there's an aspect of reality, brace yourselves, at the quantum level...
You got to keep doing that.
Well, at the quantum level, you have two choices. You have two choices. You have determinism and you have randomness.
I would say you have determinism or you don't have determinism.
Yeah, because I mean,
what is the alternative? What is the alternative to determinism?
Sure.
So, I mean, how do you fit in the idea of agency into a world?
You don't have to.
Everything obeys governing principles.
You don't have to. So let's say I'll give you the best example that I have, and that is that in the kitchen of the ACA we have a huge map of the phylogenetic tree of life.
Yeah.
And
it's fantastic. You should come down and see it.
Yeah,
1507 West Canning Lane.
And when you look at that tree of life, it is this giant branching network, and you have all of these different terminus points where a species would die off and another species would have taken on from there. To the best of my knowledge, if we were to go back in time and do it again, it may look completely different. What could have happened, what species could have adapted to things better, doesn't mean that it would have happened the exact same way every time. Where we are is that unique. It is so unique that if we were to go back in time and do it again, we probably wouldn't be here. Actually, we most likely wouldn't, because...
I can agree with that. I can agree with that, but it goes to what you said last week, that, like, I feel like what you're basically saying is that we can just pretend we have it. Like,
Right.
just pretend we have it.
But what we're hitting at is determinism. I don't think that it is. I don't think at the beginning of the universe we were destined to be here. I think that
even if so, though, even if it could have happened differently, it just would have meant that there were different governing principles that made it that way.
it could have been the same governing principles.
Yeah.
It could have been, but it doesn't give you any choice in the matter. Is my point. If
Agreed. This is just about determinism. I'm just saying determinism is not the opposite of free will, and it's not just those two. We need to decouple those.
Yeah, what I would say is you keep saying it doesn't give you any choice. At this point, I have to ask you, one, are you talking about a deterministic universe or not? Because you've said that there is determinism and then also agreed that things could have happened in a way other than the way that they happened. So when you say
what I'm saying,
non-determinism doesn't give you a choice, my question is, what do you mean by choice?
I'm saying that as far as we understand, that everything we've learned about physics, including most things about quantum physics, operate in with cause and effect, where one thing governs the next thing. Okay. And the other option besides determinism is that things are random, fundamentally.
Well,
at some point there
again,
so
that's an argument from ignorance. That's fallacious.
Yeah, I now well, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Well,
and I now have to ask you what you mean by random, because random is.
And
what we use, the word that we use when we mean that the outcome of an event is not predictable, or rather, the outcomes of an event are not predictable, is kind of roughly approaching the thing. So when you say the opposite of determinism is random, I'm not sure that you're.
Not trying to make an argument from ignorance. I'm just saying that there is this claim that we have some form of agency somewhere.
Okay.
And all I've ever seen is cause and effect.
Sure.
I don't even know how to explain how that mechanism would manifest.
Raymond, I agree with you. And where I'm going with it is, and I'm actually completely wrong. Somebody in the chat just got me, and they're absolutely right. It's not an argument from ignorance. It's a false dichotomy.
Yeah.
It's not just one or the other. It can be another option. So it could be.
What would that third option even? It's kind of like it's like when Tracy Harris talks about nothing. What would that third option even look like?
Whether or not we know what that third option could be is not the issue. We cannot logically demonstrate that something outside of a false dichotomy doesn't exist.
Well, I actually just gave you one.
Hold on. Demonstrate that we have agency.
I just gave you one.
What's that?
In the example that I gave you.
I don't understand how that.
Sure. In the example that I gave you, it's not deterministic, because if we were to go back in time, hold on.
So how does that give us?
Hold on. I'm not talking about free will. I'm giving you an example that's not what. It's not either determinism or free will. I'm giving you option 3. You're asking me what option 3 is, and we could probably come up with more. But I'm giving you one of them.
Forget about determinism, then. I just want to know the mechanism that explains free will in any sense.
So,
I doubt that there's one at all.
What you mean by free will? Because this phrase is used in multiple ways. No, we don't know what we're talking about if he doesn't define what the terms of his question. When you say free will, do you mean the ability for a person to have done something other than what they did? Or do you mean the ability of a person to make a conscious choice?
I feel like those two are kind of synonymous. I mean, I feel like
I disagree.
What I would define free will as is the ability to have no influence in the choice that you're making. That some centered version of you was able to, free of influence, make the decision other than what you made.
Oh my gosh, there's so much to unpack. Okay, so when you say some centered version of you, I'm not sure that I can agree with you that exists. When you say
and I don't think it exists.
Free of influence, even in ideas of free will that I've heard, you are the one influencing your decision, presumably. So when you say free of,
do you author your thoughts? Do you know what you're going to say next any more than you know what I'm going to say?
So there's a fundamental problem with this, which is that you're using the word you, and I'm not sure that the word you that you're using refers to something that I can say exists. But we do have a comment from the audience that I think we should take.
Hey, Claire.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, Claire.
All right. Hey, so evolutionary biologist in the audience here, and the false dichotomy that you're talking about, the alternative is actually infinite, because you have an infinite possible combination of mutations, which are random, and the physics which determines them, which is deterministic, if you want to look at it that way. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
So-
You can't say it's one or the other, and you can definitely say it's somewhere in the middle there, because of chaos theory plus physics plus,
Okay. So actually,
Goldblum needs to walk in right about now.
Oh my God, Goldblum.
with
That
a
laugh,
little
in
water
the-
on the back of your hand.
That laugh in that fucking scene. I would ask, as far as the physics being deterministic. Well, no, I'm about to. Oh, don't take our mic. As far as the physics being deterministic, my current lack of understanding is about to what degree the physics on the quantum level, if it truly isn't, if the physics at that level is truly not deterministic, does that change whether or not the physics that stacks on top of that determines the way in which, mutations occur and basically everything that happens, would that make that not deterministic?
That's an excellent...
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, of course, Raymond.
What do you believe that your consciousness is the result of your physical brain?
I believe that the thing that people generally refer to when they're talking about consciousness and the thoughts that are had in this are the result of the physical brain.
Yes.
Right. And do you think
Asterisks.
that physical matter in the universe obeys the laws of physics, and that there are no ways in which to suspend the laws of physics?
To the best of our knowledge, yes.
Yeah, that's a conclusion that I believe
And
to be
so
true.
if the laws of physics are deterministic, or if they
That's
have
my
unknown
question.
random causes, either one,
Mhm.
if either of those things are true, I still don't see the place for any sort of what we could call agency.
Raymond,
It just-
Raymond, we all are in agreement. We just corrected you on the deterministic part.
Oh,
Jamie
right.
asked.
Well, I mean,
Jamie asked for you
can
to
I just ask-
define free will, in the hope that maybe you could explore whether or not you thought there was free will, but you obviously don't. Do you?
Right.
So
No,
we're all on the
I
same
think it's
page,
important
man.
to not.
I mean, I'm not
Well,
going to
okay,
take
but
the
not-
argument of, oh, well, I think there's free, because I just don't believe that.
Right.
I'm not
So-
sure I've stated
It's just that
position
it's like,
based on these
I've heard
terms, but-
I've heard Matt Dillahunty and kind of you, kind of Eric on occasions, like, and Daniel Dennett. They want to say that like it doesn't matter, and I think it matters a lot. It matters how we look at justice. It matters how we look
I
at
disagree.
Interpersonal communication. I mean,
I also
if you
disagree.
believe,
Oh,
if you
Raymond,
believe-
you
if
just
you believe
opened an
that-
amazing door. Now we're
Well, hold
into the
on.
meat.
If you believe that people could have made a different choice than they made,
Mhm.
you will waste so much time grinding on that notion, and it's just bullshit. If you were Hitler, if you had Hitler's brain, you don't have some kind of magical ability to not do what Hitler did. If you're in anybody's shoes and have their brain, you're doing exactly what they're doing.
Now here's
I understand your argument. I think that's an interesting way of phrasing it about having their brain. But yes,
here's the thing that I want to push back on, right? So the way I think about the way that we look at the justice system, it's implied that there's free will, right? You made the choice to do this and you chose to do it, and so you're getting punished for it. But if we
Absolutely.
take that out and just take a look at what would be the suitable response to someone breaking a rule that we create if there was no such thing as free will? Well, rehabilitation and taking that person out of the general populace. If you have a murderer, then the best response that we've had of being able to protect other people from that murderer is to jail them, right? Now we can talk about whether or not the jail system is right and all of, like, that can be an entire conversation that we can have. But what I'm saying is, whether there's free will or not, jailing that person is still the right thing to do. And by jailing, I mean removing that person from where they can hurt other people. So
I agree, but there are so many important, like, specifics within that. Just saying that we jail them, obviously, in just a rational sense, just because free will isn't real doesn't mean we don't want to stop the bad stuff that's happening in the world.
Sure,
precisely.
There's so many steps. There's so many steps in between, and there's public opinion, and there's the way that people view crimes or evil, and it goes into how we treat those people, and it goes into how much we push for rehabilitation. And I think if we didn't believe in free will, we would have much more of an active response towards rehabilitation rather than just punishment for the sake of vengeance.
If we got to that point,
why would that make any difference? If a person has free will, presumably they are making decisions, and you could better believe that those decisions that they are making could be informed by things that you would provide to them to rehabilitate them. I mean, you would think about, you might think about it differently, but to me, the philosophical questions of whether or not this person is, I mean, I don't want to use the terms machine because that mischaracterizes what I believe about it, but whether or not you believe that this person has a more or less complicated or more or less free will, in quotes, means of coming to the conclusions about, for example, whether or not they murder someone. When you are looking at a justice system that serves a society, the justice system serves the society, and its intention is to form and protect a better society. And so, for example, whether or not there's this idea that I think keeps coming into these conversations. I know that when you and I have them, Eric, that part of the justice system is retribution, and I don't see that as valid in any way.
You don't see that as like
as a valid justification for actions.
I mean, I'm already assuming that we all agree with that.
Well, let me wait. Okay, so you're saying you don't see it as like part of the justice system?
No,
not just a disagreeable part of the justice system.
No, I mean, I think that people think about the justice system that way, of like, well, they deserve this, right? And you could say that serves a social purpose of making people feel like the guilty get what they're owed. But the beauty and the functioning of the justice system, given only one function that it can serve, would be to rehabilitate members of society that need it in order for them to better serve the society that they are a part of.
Now, I would like to add in something else.
Okay.
And what I'd like to add in is I do think that if the general populace were more informed about that, and if we were able to get a general consensus, there's no such thing as free will, maybe we'd be able to better structure our justice system to be less about retribution and more about rehabilitation. That said, Raymond, we received a call with someone. It was a very, very long call. They left a very long, angry message, and they said that if I don't have God, right? If I don't have my agency the way that I think I do, they said, I would go down to where you are, murder you, and rape the women in your life because I have no reason not to. I'm just physical body, and there's no purpose or meaning behind it. And where I'm going with it, Raymond, is we need to share a world with these people. So while I appreciate that we're engaging in this, I just want to bring up in the larger scope of things, and especially for those people watching, that shit still exists. And so as long as we're watchful,
I would say that I don't believe that person would do that.
Yeah,
because the funny thing about free will is if you don't have free will, you don't have the choice to have free will. So like I can say, some people think that if you don't believe in free will, then the necessary conclusion is fatalism, but that doesn't make sense. Like, just try not making your decisions for the day. Just try sitting around and doing nothing, or just try deciding that you don't care about life and just kill yourself or something. Like you can't just because free will goes out the window doesn't mean that you suddenly have some kind of choice to disobey it. You're still going to do exactly what you're going to do.
I agree, and there are people, I think, out there who are unhinged. I mean, I think that we need to continue to develop, and having these conversations is fantastic, but pretending that people like that who would act that way don't exist, like...
I don't know that
No,
those
and
people.
I see that.
You know what I
I'm
mean?
sure that they exist somewhere, but it's kind of like making the argument that religious people make when they say that, like, you know, maybe religion's not true or we don't have any good reason to believe it, but it's useful and it keeps people in line, and certain people who have it need it or they would do horrible things.
The noble
I feel like
lie.
as true as that might be, it's still not worth hiding the truth. And I feel similarly about free will, that, like, you know, there is this claim that somewhere we have some sort of choice-making capability or mechanism, and I just don't even see how that would make sense in a temporal universe.
I agree. You're right.
And so,
That is a really good point. That is a really, really good point.
thanks.
Yeah, thank you, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes me back to that uncomfortable place, right? Of
Oh,
not
it's so
knowing.
uncomfortable. I think about it all the time.
Yeah, because I need to live in that world where all of those things are true. That there do exist people who would react that way, and that doesn't mean that we should keep the truth from people. It can just be dangerous
Right.
for those
And
of us who are willing to stand up and say, "Hey, maybe this dogma isn't true, and there are a lot of implications that we need to unpack with it."
And just for me personally, aside from like the justice system or any social implications, just for me personally, not believing that people couldn't have made any other choice than they made gives me a whole lot of inner peace on how I view the people around me. And if I'm wronged by somebody, I can fall back on the idea that they were doing just exactly what the pattern of their brain made them do. You know, it gives me a lot of peace in reconciling why I could be mistreated or why anybody mistreats anyone.
Sure, but now you're getting into what the consequences of a belief are and that they're beneficial, which I'd just like to remind everyone has no relation to whether or not they're true.
Yeah,
Additionally, I would encourage you to look into different types of, brace yourself, Eric, meditation, particularly things that can cause the ego death, which is a much more surefire and fleshed out way of achieving that understanding, because when you say something like the pattern in their brain made them do, I think that I generally understand what you're saying, but the terms that you're using to express it lead me to believe that you have a different understanding of human beings than I do.
Well, you're not, we feel like we're more than just a moment, but we're just literally in an ever-changing moment. You know, consciousness doesn't fill a zeitgeist. It is actually only just a moment.
Yeah,
we can think about the future and we can think about the past, but we're trapped in a moment. So that moment of your consciousness.
Oh boy.
Are we going to power slide into sophistry?
I think relatively well. I mean, this is also a call that's going to need to continue on the Discord, because
we do.
But before we move on, what I would say is, I've yet to hear an explanation of consciousness that, given an understanding of identity, particularly one aided by an ego death, leads me to believe that it exists in the way that I think a lot of people use it to mean. The patterns that occur in the brain cause the thoughts that we experience, end quotes, and they cause the actions that, quote, we undertake. But my problem is that when you push back on the physical experiences that you have to try and find what it is that is experiencing that, where is the self, you figure out through meditation there isn't one. Exactly. So when people, I feel like, oftentimes in common conversations and in forums online, say consciousness, they mean something tied to or close to or identical to the self. And I have a difficult time explaining that that's not something that I've concluded exists psychologically.
Oh, and I totally agree. But there is, the thing I was saying about the moment is that, there is no self, but there is the moment. There's the I think, therefore I am. Something's happening to us. And
they're brain patterns.
And so, I just, when I refer to the self or the consciousness, I understand that there isn't actually like a centered self. There isn't one part of you that you can say is you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. This is the kind of thing that you can sit down and have a beer over for like 5 hours.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is
absolutely.
also
I
the
really
kind of
appreciate
conversation that occurs on our Discord.
Very often,
How
actually.
can people find the Discord, Eric?
Well, we have different links to Discord. And if you want the fastest and easiest way, you can hop in the live chat. They've been posting links. Or you can go to any of our social media channels. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, on Reddit. And let me tell you that every single one of them has posted the link to our Discord. Excuse me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
And
man.
Thanks for taking my call. I know you guys don't choose to make this show, but I'm glad that you do anyway.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Yep.
Take care, buddy. You know,